Hey YouTube, Xlice here. 3.0 for Wuthering Waves is finally here, which means we get a whole new region, new beautiful characters, and new combat mechanics. But before we get too crazy, this is a Lynae guide. So while you take in the fresh new scenes of Lynae, I'll be teaching you everything you need to know about Lynae and showcasing her power at S0. This guide is going to be slightly different than usual, since I recognize most people clicking just want a quick crash course on how to play her. So the first segment of this video will be an extremely dumbed down version of what to do on her, so you can skip all that text description and get right into enjoying 3.0. Afterwards, like usual, I'll be going over her full kit in a digestible fashion to explain exactly how everything works. This is going to be done on the WuWa Media Server, and of course, that means things are subject to change for full release. Let me know in the comments if you like the extra crash course or a general feedback. Drop a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, and let's get started. So this is Lynae. Spectro, pistol wielder, attack and crit scaling. Signature weapon is a mix between personal stats and team buffing, so she's designed as a sub DPS but can also be a main DPS. In the team, put her here or here, depending on how you rotate. I usually rotate support, sub DPS, main DPS if doing a non-quick swap team like this. Alright, so now we transition to trial combat, and this is what she looks like. Cute speedometer for her Forte gauge. She's basically got 3 goals as a sub DPS. Activate her ultimate, fill her concerto energy for outro skill, and complete her rotation as smoothly and quickly as possible. So let's jump right into a rotation. So we're going to be entering with intro skill. Initial Forte bar will gain about 80% of the bar just from that. Then ult for team-wide damage bonus for 30 seconds. So you'll want to use this to buff herself and your main DPS, who will usually come right after. If she's the main DPS, then you'll want to ult right away to buff all of her own damage. Then the rest of the rotation to prep energy for that next ult. So the ulti is going to connect to an extra basic attack. Make sure to use that for the energy. It's pretty important. She'll basically like ride her motorcycle into the enemy. Then we're going to E or basic for full Forte. I usually use E for more energy. Then hold heavy to consume the Forte bar and enter roller skate mode. Now your Forte bar uses the speedometer and has 3 bars. The longer you hold, the more damage you'll deal, and the more you convert her initial Forte bar into her speedometer. Full hold deals max damage, generates the most energy, and gives you full 120 of the speed thing. It takes a couple of seconds, but it's better than releasing early. If you do release early, it'll generate less energy, do less damage, and give you less of the speed bar, so you'll need to do additional attacks and movement to get there anyway. Once you're at 120, press spacebar 3 times in a row to generate those bars, and at 3 stacks, she can do an enhanced basic for a final plunge for big damage. This finishes her rotation, and then she can Q plus outro. If you're lacking on energy, you can send one more E as well before outroing. I use Q at the end because it gives you a 15-second window to outro to give buffs. Sometimes if enemies screw up your rotation, you could be stuck on Lynae for longer than 15 seconds. If you want easy muscle memory, you can just EQ right after her ult plus the basic at the beginning of the rotation. Q at the end for guaranteed safety on passing the buff. And now if you want to stay on her and continue DPSing, you totally can, but it will extend her otherwise really fast rotation. Just basic or heavy like usual, get that speedometer back to 120, jump around, and plunge. Personal fan of the pew pew stuff during heavy. It's really satisfying, but does consume stamina. Her big plunge nuke only occurs once per rotation, so the second plunge will be weaker. And then once you're ready, echo plus outro and a rotation is complete. For my visual learners, this is what the combo is going to look like.
Drive safe! Don't blink! You'll miss the best part! I call the shots. Go over here. Zip! Woo! Ha! No look! Shake with...
And that's the crash course for Lynae. Still got a bit of detail in her kit to cover, but if you just want to play her right away, then enjoy. You'll probably need to build her, so take a peek at the weapons and echo section for what to aim for. Alright, now for a bit of a deep dive to explain how she works. So, first things first, her Forte page has this mode selection at the top left. This is going to be using the new mechanic in the game called Toon Break. Also, it's down here as well. For the sake of brevity in this guide, I'm going to assume you know the basics of it. And if you don't, right now, it's okay. You'll get accustomed to it pretty quick. So the TLDR that I can provide right now is that every character in the game can access Toon Break. This will be on the F key when an enemy is in a vulnerable state. Specific characters in 3.x and onwards have access to 2 specific toon abilities called Rupture and Strain. If you take a look here, Rupture is going to be flat damage and Strain is going to be scaling. So Toon Strain can be stacked at a higher limit with more teammates that are also on that Strain mode, making it stronger to use in quote-unquote mono-toon teams. Not exactly the best wording, but I think it conveys the idea easily. Now, Rupture is nice to use for the extra flat damage if you only have one 3.x character in the party. The important thing you need to know about Lynae is that she currently is the only character in the game that can apply Toon Rupture or Toon Strain. Any character will be able to Toon Break which is this ability right here, and proc the extra rupture damage, but only 3.x characters will be able to scale it for themselves, doing this extra thing, right? And even fewer will be able to apply it. So Lynae herself, she will be able to apply it. So this tune thing is definitely the niche mechanic of this region. For Lynae, you can choose between rupture or strain. Just click this button right here. So residence mode switch, this is currently strain mode. It's this little icon here, and then rupture is going to be the left one. Now it's important to note that these do not actually change her kit at all. So don't worry about her being like a dual mode complicated character. Since she's the only 3.x character we have right now, we're going to stay in the left mode, which is rupture mode. In the future, when we get more characters and team them up, strain may be better for scaling. So now for her actual abilities. Let's cover them in order of how her rotation executes. Intro is going to go first. This will give her 100 points of her Forte bar out of 120, which is around 80%. Then her ultimate. So use this right away after intro if you have it. If your energy is a bit off after intro skilling, use her E or spam basics right after to generate the extra energy. All teammates, including herself, will gain 24% damage bonus for 30 seconds. This is enough time for both her own rotations and the main DPS coming after her to receive full buffs. Now, once you max her Forte bar, we now hold heavy to change stance. This gives her immunity to interruption and 50% less damage taken, so theoretically you should be able to use this and tank most abilities. This ability is called Spark Collision, and it's in the normal attack Forte. It has 3 levels here. The most important thing for you to know is that her Forte is converted to this speedometer thing. So the full bar will give you 100% speed, which is also level 3 damage. On the multiplier tabs, level 3 is 277% by 2, which is pretty good and way better than the lower levels. The game will automatically launch you when it's full charge, so just hold it until it fires. Remember, I do not recommend you instantly release it because not only does it deal less damage, it also doesn't really speed up your rotation since you have to generate her speed anyway, and it also gives you less ultimate energy. So after this, you'll be stance changed and you'll have 120 of the speed bar. Now we move to the Forte circuit. So in here, you're going to use your space bar 3 times, which are called these polychrome leap attacks. And then after those 3 times, she uses these big things called visual impact or iridescent splash. This will be the single biggest number that you see in her kit, but it does have a 25-second cooldown, meaning you can only use it once per rotation. If you're playing on field and continue to fight and do another leap sequence, the next plunge will be the iridescent splash number. Now, after her big plunge, this is usually where she finishes her rotation. I typically use 1 more E to generate energy, and then you add in her Q for echo ability, and then outro out. Outro is going to give 15% damage amp and 25% ult amp to the next resonator. Best user to currently receive this buff in 3.0 is going to be Iuno, the feet goddess. Now, while battling, if at any point in time you see the Q to press F on an enemy, she'll use Tune Break and then add her extra rupture damage if you're on rupture mode. One thing that's really important to note with this damage here, Tune Break you can do with anyone on your team. It does not have to be Lynae herself. As long as she applies the rupture debuff, it will proc extra damage from her specifically, and it'll be in the elemental type that she is, which is Spectro for her. The extra damage is defined in the Forte circuit under this name Tune Rupture Response. Her base abilities will apply this rupture debuff, so don't think about it too hard. Specifically, it's when she applies this thing called Photochromic Flux. This happens on the following abilities: her intro, the spacebar attacks, her big plunge after she spacebars 3 times, and her middle Forte node. It does not apply on her normal attacks, heavy, ult, or E. All right, now finally to the rest of the Forte node bonuses. Middle, like I said, will provide more flux application from the spray paint from her plunge attack. Also gives you exploration bonuses for the motorbike when she's on the team. Top Forte is going to give her 25% spectral damage for 9 seconds after intro, which is basically the time you have to complete her rotation until the final plunge. This bottom part also describes a really neat exploration mechanic on her roller skates. So the roller skates are when she stance changes after her first Forte bar when you do the charge heavy. This mode has no duration when activated, so you can basically do it permanently. In overworld traversal, if you happen to dodge without using directional keys, you can get a camel buff for 15 seconds. So just dodge and keep your left hand off the keyboard. Don't press WASD. If you do, it'll just be a normal dodge. This camel buff you can roam around in and enemies will not initiate combat. Only downside is you cannot jump in it. That'll remove the camo, but it's still really cool. So that's going to be a comprehensive overview of Lynae, a bit longer than most characters because she's the newest in 3.0, and I wanted to give as much context for these new mechanics as possible. So TLDR on the buffs that she gives. Ult is going to give 24% team-wide damage bonus. Outro is going to give 15% damage amp, and 25% ult amp. And then intro is going to give 25% damage bonus for herself off of the top Forte node. The rest of her Forte nodes are going to give her crit rate and attack. All right, now for Forte priority. So Forte circuit has the highest multipliers, with visual impact being the number that will most likely catch your eye. Ult has the second highest for that prismatic overblast damage. And the normal attack has the third highest, which will be the level 3 spark collision damage. These three Fortes are your most important. The E will be used about 1 to 3 times per rotation, and intro is used once. For the specific order, refer to what's on the screen. All right, so while she's busy popping her bubblegum, let's talk about her sequence nodes. Like usual, the first 2 sequence nodes are on the table, even for F2Ps, assuming you have the currency. All quote-unquote final damage estimates are subject to change until my S0 to S6 showcase vid is complete. That will happen after release and be posted on my second channel. So S1, 2.2x final damage increase to her space bar attacks. Spray paint from her plunge has now double duration and gains a small CC vacuum. A spray paint is one of the things that also applies tune debuff on enemies. She also gains immunity to interruption during all jump attacks and her plunge. And finally, when she's out of combat for 2 seconds during her normal state, she'll gain full Forte bar. So the main game from this is definitely the immunity and the damage increase. The Forte bar 1 is debatably useful. It does save her about 2 seconds on her rotation, which is really nice since you immediately intro into ultimate. But you might be starved for ult energy to begin with, so you might have to use abilities right after the intro skill before you ult, because you want to ult right away before her main rotation. S2, 25% self-damage amp and an extra 25% more damage amp for our outro skill. So our outro should now be 40% damage amp because it's 15% base. S3, plunges gain a 1.9x final damage increase. She also gains a bunch of bonuses for being above 120 Luma Flow. This is going to be her speed bar thing. This one's confusing by default here because it improves her enhanced E damage when she's in roller skate mode, but you don't really get this value because you can't maintain roller skate mode all the time. When she outro skills, she immediately leaves that state. So it's kind of weird, but yeah, this will change at S6, which we'll get to. So it looks like all of this text here on S3 is kind of locked behind S6. This one needs some testing though. At the bare minimum, plunges do gain some final damage. S4 is 20% attack, quite commonly the most bland sequence node for every character, so no surprise here. S5, ult gains a 1.7x final damage increase, and then S6. So here, she transforms into a main DPS. Also, at the bottom here, it says she stays in rollerblade mode after casting outro skill. This is really important because guess what? This is what makes S3 actually work. So now she's permanently in rollerblade mode, gains 360 upper limit of her speed bar thing, and when entering, she gains 120. Now, this doesn't mean she gets to do more spacebar attacks. Spacebar will use 1/3 of your bar every single time. So if she's 360 upper limit, then each of her spacebars will use 120. Just want to make that clear so you don't think that you're jumping like 20 times. Besides that, she also gains more damage for her spacebar attacks and plunges. So she has this 30% that stacks up to 3 times for 90%. Unsure if this is final damage yet. To gain these values, you're going to need to incorporate heavy attacks, which is the graffiti blast, and mid-air heavy attacks. Her core gameplay does change here since she no longer has her base form. Instead, you'll use S3's enhanced E alongside heavy attacks, and then you're going to jump and plunge. I'll be testing out this one for sure because it looks quite different than S0. Overall, this is what I see from her sequence nodes. S1 is standard immunity to interruption and more damage. S2 is the supportive node by making her outro stronger. S3 is a soft transition to main DPS, but you can't really access it until S6. S4 is attack, S5 is ult damage, and S6 seems to be a complete gameplay change. It's full main DPS Lynae. The break points in my opinion are S2 and S6. I might be wrong with S3. You might be able to use this quite easily just at S3, so things are subject to change. All right, now weapons. So new region, new standard for weapons. So this is going to be a pretty short section, only have a couple to consider. Her signature. This is best in slot by far, 12% attack, 36% basic damage for 48% total personal stat. When she inflicts any of the tune debuff, either rupture or strain, she grants 8% damage bonus to all resonators for up to 3 stacks. So 3 stacks are going to occur naturally through her rotation, so this is a pretty easy 24% damage bonus to all teammates, including herself. Overall, it's a pretty juice weapon. You're getting 48 plus 24 for 72% stat for herself. She gives 24% for allies, and she also has 24% crit rate for easy building. Other possible 5-stars are just going to be the standard pistols. I don't recommend the signature pistols from other 5-star characters because their stats don't match what she needs, so stick to standard. Static Mist. Can't go wrong at 24% crit rate, 12.8% regen, and 10% attack to the next resonator on outro skill. Now the new standard pistol gives 48.6 crit damage, 12% attack, and 20% damage bonus to just herself. So between these, they're very similar. Static Mist is best for pure sub DPS to support, and Homogenizer is best for more personal Lynae damage. For 4 stars, we're just going to go as utility as possible. If you plan to main DPS her, it's not worth going a 4-star pistol. Aim for a 5-star standard or her signature. Both battle pass pistols are pretty mediocre. Solar Flame can be used strictly for crit rate, but its passive is split between attack and heavy attack. Attack is nice, heavy attack is not used. Now Thunderbolt is even weaker, with attack and skill damage bonus. Cadenza is going to be fine for pure regen and auto skill control, but provides no offensive bonuses for her, strictly used just as a support weapon. Relativistic Jet is okay for attack stat stick and a bit of energy. Personally, the 4-stars aren't that great in my opinion, so I'd recommend just getting one of the 5-stars. Now, time for echoes. So we've got 2 new sets to consider for her. Nothing else comes close. Standard sub DPS is going to run Pact of Neon Light Leap, or 5-piece leap set for short. This gives 10% spectral damage and 15 to 30% attack to the incoming resonator. The 30% attack is going to come from Tune Break conversion, which is base 10 for every 3.x character, base 0 for anyone before, and Lynae grants 40 after her big plunge. For you, don't worry about it. Lynae gives the full 30%. So the other set to consider is 4-piece Revelation for main DPS Lynae. Now, the media server currently does not have any fixed echoes for it, so I had to RNG these myself. They have much more random stats. So in my opinion, the intention is for her S0 build to run sub DPS, but I'm also trying out main DPS Lynae so you can see how she performs. The set bonus can provide 10% spectral damage for the 2-piece, and 4-piece will grant up to 30% more spectral damage from this stacking, and 40% basic attack damage bonus after ulting. This totals to possibly 80% stat, which is quite juicy. However, this will require to stack the basic attack damage 3 times before casting ult, which can change your rotation slightly. You basically just swap out the E after your intro with basic attacks instead. Now, the main echo is going to be the Havacia 4 cost for the sub DPS set, and then Nebulous Cannon for the main DPS set. So the reason is because Havacia provides a 10% all damage bonus to just the intro skill of the incoming resonator for 15 seconds. So it's not a universal buff, it's just a singular attack buff. However, Nebulous Cannon provides 12% spectro and 12% basic attack damage bonus. Do note that Nebulous is a transformative echo, so if you were to use it, I would use it at the end of the rotation where you can outro swap cancel it. Havacia is going to be a summon, so there's no worries there. Now, of course, if you don't want to use Havacia, you can still use Nebulous Cannon at the very end for that 12% spectral damage and 12% basic attack damage bonus, and just forego the 10% damage bonus to the intro skill, because this is a buff only for the intro skill and not for all the abilities of the incoming resonator. For builds, go standard 433. Since these are 5-piece sets, 4 builds are currently not viable. Run crit rate or crit damage 4 cost, whatever gets your crit rate above 75%. For 3 cost echoes, attack or LE damage is going to work fine. We are actually reaching the point where we have more damage bonus buffs than attack buffs, so running 1 attack, 1 LE is a pretty good option for balance. Regardless, focus on subsets first. As a sub DPS, prioritize some ER. I'd say 120 to 130 to be comfortable. Her ult is the most important ability in her entire kit, so if you're struggling to keep uptime, invest in more regen. With my current fixed stats of 134, her rotation sometimes gets a little close for comfort, but overall it's very doable. For substats, aim for ER until you're comfortable, and then crit rate over crit damage, over attack, over basic damage. Her damage is mostly considered basic attack damage, but her ultimate is not. So prioritize attack over basic for substats. All right, now onto a quick stat check. As a reminder, these are media server echoes with fixed crit rate, crit damage, energy regen, and attack. So this build will have higher attack on average with the extra 10% on each piece. Crit rolls are all min rolls, so this is the lowest bound assuming every piece is double crit. With these echoes, these are her stats. 2.4k attack, 68.8 crit rate, 257 crit damage, and 134 regen. On live servers, you can expect a lower bound of attack of about 2.2k. My personal recommendations for you guys: 75% plus crit rate, but ideally like 85 plus. Current team comps will be pairing her with SK until someone with lasers might drop by, so eventually she'll want to be comfortable without crit rate help. 250 plus crit damage and 120 plus ish ER. Your crit damage will vary depending on the weapon you use, so don't worry too much about hitting a certain threshold. Ideal builds on signature weapon can probably hit 80 plus crit rate with 250 plus crit damage. Perfect builds will probably be 80 to 75 with 2.4k attack with 140 plus ER. This is like perfect substat on everything. Now you'll notice that her total crit rate will be on the lower side since her signature is 24.3% instead of 36%. So prioritize high crit rate pieces over others. Team synergies. So as the first unit of 3.x, we don't really have specific main DPS or a general team comp to synergize with, so she's kind of on her own right now. As a sub DPS, she'll link up very easily with Shorekeeper at the moment, but not with Chisa. Tune is not considered a negative status, so Chisa enjoyers will have to wait emulate for future teammates. The current best main DPS to team up with is actually Iuno. She should be in the team during trials so you can test her out, and is considered a main DPS in this lineup. Now don't be fooled, her original design was to be the Moon and Sun duo with Augusta. While she still is, this unique team comp turns her into the main DPS, and the total team's damage rotation is incredibly strong for how fast it is. With the new Toon Break mechanic that adds additional flat damage, the team's DPS is highly competitive with the strongest comps that we have so far, despite what looks to be a Shorekeeper with 2 sub DPS. So if you pick up Lynae and have Shorekeeper plus Iuno, try it out yourself. The team rotates super quick and does an insane amount of damage despite not having a quote-unquote dedicated main DPS. Besides that though, Lynae can technically sub DPS for any other main carry in the game since her buffs are generic damage bonus. Ult is 24% all damage bonus and outro is 15% all damage amp. You may not get value out of the 25% ult amp, but that's okay. Iuno will use that. So the starting comp thus far is Shorekeeper plus Lynae plus anything. Both Shorekeeper and Lynae have very simple setups, leaving your main carry free reign. Now the great thing also with Lynae's universal bonuses is that you're not left out of Toon Break bonuses. In combat, Toon Break isn't something you need to think about that often, especially with Rupture. All you do is press F when you see the enemy is in a vulnerable state. No matter what character you're on, it will always do flat neutral damage, and then it'll add Lynae's extra Rupture response damage. This is of course if we're on the Rupture mode for Lynae. If you want to do main DPS Lynae, that's totally fine too. She's primarily a basic damage dealer, so supports like Sanhua are ideal. We do also have characters like Lupa and Rotzia, who have basic amp on outro, but they are lower value than Sanhua since they have split bonuses to their typing. Do be aware though, while Sanhua does amplify Lynae the most, her personal sub DPS damage is definitely nothing to write home about, so overall the team's damage will suffer. In general, Lynae is a standalone sub DPS, great in all situations and best to support ult scalers. Alright, now on to some showcases. So I have 2 simple ones, one supporting Iuno and one as a main DPS with Sanhua. Characters are S0R1, with Sanhua being S6R1 Emerald of Genesis. So first up is sub DPS with Iuno. We're going to test out against TOA, and friendly reminder that these enemies are media server enemies, so no correlation to what you would actually see on live servers. This TOA floor also has 10% increased spectral res, so we're actually slightly weaker than normal. Okay, so there's gonna be a standard team comp here, SK into Lynae into Iuno. First setting up with Shorekeeper. Make sure to get this parry off for that toughness bar decrease. Alright, Lynae's introing in. Very simple rotation into an immediate ult. Gonna connect to the normal attack right afterwards. Do some extra free damage. Then E and then charge up Spark Collision. We're gonna deal about 25k times 2. Triple jump into a plunge and then instantly EQ, and that's it. So her rotation is super fast. Then we got Iuno entering with a massive 312k ultimate crit. And Iuno's rotation is complete. So this is what I'm saying by this team comp rotates super fast. And then we got Toon Break here. You'll see the flat damage of 87k and that spectral damage of 96.7k is Lynae's Rupture response. So if I were to press F on, for example, Iuno, you would still see that spectral, like that yellow damage from Lynae. So second rotation here.
Check this out.
So my immunity to interruption on Spark Collision allows me to tank that. Very nice.
Watch closely. Answer my call.
All right, now on to Iuno again. 303,000. Beautiful. You can see the enemies are a little bit tankier here. So Iuno finished her rotation super fast once her Forte bar is consumed. We get another Toon Break here. 96.7. Same thing. It's flat damage. So basically, each rotation now gets an extra, maybe like 190 to 200k damage.
Tie a bow and call that my signature.
But yeah, so fluidly, if you take a look at this rotation, it feels pretty good to play, right? The only time that you're relatively vulnerable is during the hold heavy from Lynae, but even then, you're guaranteed immunity to interruption during that, and you take 50% reduced damage, so it's quite nice. The only time that you might get quote-unquote staggered is if you're in the jump phase, and that will be solved, of course, with S1. You want to invest in that. So if you do get staggered out of your jumps, it's going to be a little bit painful, but overall it's not going to hurt your rotation too much. All right, now for main DPS Lynae. So this showcase is going to be longer than Iuno's because our team DPS is significantly lower, with Sanhua taking up the sub DPS slot. Her sole purpose is to quickly generate her outro skill and swap into Lynae. This run actually took almost 5 hours to do, since I wanted as clean of a run as possible and clear for 3 stars. The damage was really tight, and we had to take advantage of tune breaks at specific times, and also hope that the boss's RNG didn't screw me over with freezes, shield regeneration, and his blizzard move. You'll see. Anyways, it's going to be pretty fluid, but yeah, it took me a long time to get this. Okay, so same setup as usual. Doing Shorekeeper, autos, building up that outro bar. Make sure to parry him here, EQ, and then ult. Now Sanhua's going to enter. Gonna connect with her intro here, then R. I'm going to do her heavy attack detonation, and then instant outro. So it's very, very fast. And so here's a little bit different thing about Lynae. Since we're on the DPS set, I should have mentioned that. Since we're on the DPS set, we're actually changing our rotation. I'll speak about it again when we see it. But you basically start after your intro, you're going to basic attack 3 times, and then ult. You're going to skip the E, and you're going to go straight to the charge. So yeah, the damage there was over 200k, so we're doing double damage over sub DPS. You can see that the boss's HP is still relatively low. Now this is a specific thing. I'm waiting to tune break when his weakness bar shows up again. This is so that we get him into a down stage faster. If you do it earlier, you're going to miss that a little bit, and he might do some annoying ass mechanics. So you guys can see, before he even does an action here, we were already 50% on the stagger bar. Let's repeat just really quickly so you guys can see that. Okay. After Sanhua, intro, basic until full Forte bar, then ultimate, then immediately hold your charge. You can buffer this. So hold heavy, and then boom. You get about 48k, and then he had damage reduction there, but it's fine. 220k plunge there. And then do the hold charge. This is really satisfying. And then we do it again. So you'll notice that the main DPS rotation kind of skips the setup because she's on for a longer period of time. So we'll take a look once again. This run is pretty optimized considering I've been doing it for 5 hours, right? So I know exactly what I'm looking for. Okay, here we go. Lynae again. Basic. Ult. Hold heavy. Hold this F. Okay, don't tune break yet. We have a lot of time. 220k plunge. Hold charge until the speedometer reads 120 again. I do F here because I notice that he's up again and does not interrupt my rotation. Then we do the 3 jumps, we plunge, and we're good.
Vow from the soul.
You see how he's like staggered in this state and he's already 50% bar down? It's really nice for basically saving boss mechanics I have to do.
Stay behind me.
So now we're introing, his toughest bar is going, we're doing iframes from our ultimate, really nice. And then we have EQ again, and then we're back to Lynae. You can see the toughest bar is already ready here. We're gonna ultimate. He's at like 1% on the bar here. Gonna collision, and boom, he's down. Triple jump. And then we're gonna finish it off with some heavies. Beautiful. So this is the most successful run that I had out of all of them. It took me quite a while to achieve, but as you guys can see, it plays differently. You're not going to be seeing the pew pew hold heavy during sub DPS rotation, because in sub DPS, you're going things super quick. You're going to intro in, you're going to E to get the energy and also to get your Forte bar. Then you're going to ult, then you're going to charge. And then after that, you're in stance change mode. You're going to triple jump, plunge, and EQ out. It's super, super fast. When you're doing main DPS, you're gonna extend the rotation longer. After you do the first big plunge for 220,000 or 100,000 of doing some DPS, then we're gonna do the heavy thing. We're gonna do about like 50 to 100 bullets of a little bit of chip damage, and then we're gonna jump 3 times again and do a second plunge. The second plunge is going to be 1/4 the strength of the main plunge. That's just how the multipliers are. Nice. So both showcases are done. Overall, the Iuno Lynae comp is bloody strong for how incomplete it appears on paper. We took away Iuno from Augusta combo and made her a main DPS. And Lynae is a solo tune break unit with no special synergy with the rest of the lineup. But still, the damage is absolutely crazy high with Iuno nuking crazy numbers, and the rotation is one of the fastest in the game. And your characters are aerial for a lot of the fight, avoiding free damage, and can abuse iframes from ults and staggers from tune break to slow down the pace of enemies even more. Kind of insane. DPS Lynae plays completely different, and in my opinion, when you get the hang of it, has an incredibly satisfying gameplay loop because you're able to access her really cool heavy attacks in that pew pew mode. I'm pretty excited to showcase S0 to S6 on my second channel very soon for main DPS Lynae. Now, is she worth the pull? So she's basically the universal sub DPS of Lynae Roy right now. Has a simple but effective combat style, good universal buffs, and good damage for her rotations. Besides Mornia in the future, we don't know what combat style the future units are going to be, so it's tough to put value on units that we don't know are coming. I think her strength at S0R1 makes her pretty appealing to pull as the first character of Lynae Roy, and she can double as a main DPS if you really want. So that's gonna wrap up this comprehensive guide on Lynae. If this video helped you out, I'd appreciate a like and sub to show YouTube that you enjoyed the video, and if you know someone who's interested in Lynae, maybe this video would help them out. I stream every night on Twitch at twitch.tv/Xlice, so if you want to ask questions, hang out, or chill, I'm knee deep in a variety of gacha games, so yeah. Let me know in the comments what you think about her. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.